you've mentioned that the comments are wild. Some of the trades are wild. What is your overall kind of mind frame heading into this transaction season for the Heat and for the league at large?
Why does this fan base have a boner for D'Angelo Russell? That's where I'm at right now. Because it just doesn't make a lot of sense just from a Heat basketball standpoint, where I'm seeing a lot of people. I understand Naz Reid, cool. If you want to like get D'Angelo Russell and Naz Reid, and if you want to reroute D'Angelo Russell somewhere else, fine. Getting D'Angelo Russell for Kyle Lowry in some sort of swap and whatever else just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. As somebody who, again, covered the Brooklyn Nets from 2016 to 2019, was there for the D'Angelo Russell experience. And he was very good. He became an all-star during that time. But there were times, even in his all-star season at the beginning of the year, that he didn't jive with Kenny Atkinson. And how he became an all-star is really, he went to another level when Spencer Dinwiddie broke his thumb. And then, because before that, it was kind of debatable as to who the all-star on the team would be. But D'Angelo Russell was playing out of his mind offensively. Defensively is another story. But Kenny Atkinson is kind of an Eric Spoelstra, not disciple, but like, you know, they're cut from the same coaching cloth. Eric Spoelstra's a lot better. And Kenny Atkinson, I think, is going to be a very good head coach when he gets another opportunity. If he was clashing with Kenny Atkinson then, and I do think D'Angelo Russell has improved and matured and become more of a leader in Minnesota as far as their growth has been the last couple of years, I don't think he makes a lot of sense on this roster, on this team. I don't think they need that. And if you're using the Kyle chip on D'Angelo Russell and Naz Reid, I think that's a waste, because the Kyle chip and the contract in particular would be of better use after the season, in the summer, for reasons that we have sort of hinted at regarding a certain somebody potentially in LA whose contract is very large, but who also may be down to come back to Miami. I wouldn't use the Kyle Lowry chip just to get off of it now, because people all of a sudden want D'Angelo Russell, who, by the way, is an expiring contract. And then you have to ask yourself, is this somebody you want as part of Jimmy Butler's future long-term? I think he's a very talented player. I don't think he makes sense on this team in particular. Just not me. So that's where I'm at.
You make a compelling case. I will say that the Heat, as currently projected, the Heat are $20 million in the tax before next year even arrives, just based off of the salaries that they have. So swapping out Kyle Lowry's $28 million for D'Angelo Russell's $31 million, which is then expiring if they plan on letting him walk, is one way to get underneath that number. Sending Duncan away for an expiring is another way to get under that number. But that really kind of punts on this build to a degree. So I do agree that that's maybe not where it would be an interesting move. I think it would be financially driven. Sean, what do you like about D'Angelo Russell? We talked recently about maybe this team doesn't need necessarily the same kind of point guard they needed initially because of so many people being able to create and such. Your thoughts on D'Angelo Russell, who's probably the biggest name that's been linked to the Heat the most nationally so far as we've gotten under the way with transaction season?
Yeah, I think it was me, you, and Alex were on a post game talking about that with in reference to Gabe Vincent, that you don't necessarily need a true point guard like a Mark Price or Terrell Brandon to go down the left slot and get the offense going. Sorry for those shout outs. I don't know. Those are the first two names that came to my mind. But D'Lo, first of all, Brian is so anti-D'Lo. I don't know what happened, but he has convinced me like D'Lo is the plague. If he comes to Miami, like all things bad are going to happen. I haven't dug into it too much.
It's not that. It just doesn't make sense here. The way this organization runs and Heat culture and all that stuff. I think he's good on a different type of team. I actually think he would make sense in like Dallas. I don't know.
I just think he gives you scoring. He gives you zero defense. If that's what you want off the bench, that spark, I get it. I just don't see him as a starting point guard on a very good contending team, if that's what we're intending to do here. If it's a financial move because of the expiring aspect of his contract, now we're talking about a different story. We're not necessarily talking so much competitively. We're talking about, financials. So I don't expect that. I'm more of the person that's looking at 125% of $4.7 million, Dwayne Dedmon's salary. That's the range I'm looking at. not these big, home run swings.
I am glad that you went there because that I can pass the ball to Tropical Blanket, but before I do so, be a wet blanket, because I think that you just hit the nail on the head with this 4.7, looking at the 120% either way. Because I truthfully believe that Dwayne Dedman and his contract is probably the most likely chip that gets used here. Maybe you throw Omer in a deal to slightly increase the salary of the player you can go and get. Alex, do you think that there's a chance? And like, I guess this is an open-ended question. How likely do you think it is that a player like Duncan or Kyle in a deal of that magnitude could come to fruition, just based off of like the kind of stuff you read nationally and what you've seen around this team? And then if it is just a Deadman type deal, who are your favorite players that are in that range that you would want the Heat to look at, that you think could make a big difference, considering that they only make around $5 million, but they could still help this team and catapult them into at least out of the play-in scenario?
Okay, so a lot there. Before I get into that, since we were talking about D'Angelo Russell, I wanted to kind of look at his on and off data this year. So when he's on the floor for the Timberwolves this year, their net rating is negative 2.41. When he's off the floor, they're a positive 3.20. So about a 5-point swing there with the Timberwolves. Okay, so not to blame everything on him, but I just thought, some interesting context for D'Angelo Russell stuff, even though, he is 11 years younger. Not that I want him for the Heat or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to get into.